Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where we provide world-class education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is the United Kingdom News and Culture, episode 127. We want to thank all of our loyal followers from around the world. Thank you for subscribing to our channels. Thank you for watching on Roku worldwide, on Amazon Fire, E360 TV, and Zizzle TV. Let's get the show started. Let's welcome the star of our show, DIANN FLOYD BOEHM, international award-winning author, global networker, and gardener extraordinaire. Welcome to the show, DIANN.
Thank you, Dr. Jacalyn. I never know what you're going to say. I really want to congratulate you. I'm just blown away on how many live streaming shows we're on. It's incredible.
Well, thank you, DIANN. I think we have now 49 different shows. We just added 2 more shows to our collection. So we have all different topics, which really just brings joy to my heart. As you know, we have new people who have joined us as elevated listeners as well. And I thank you for referring as many people as you have to our family.
You're welcome. And I always will. That is for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. So why don't you tell our audience what you've been up to?
I've been really more in the creative mode. I have some stories just rumbling in my head. And so I'll wake up in the middle of the night and my husband's like, he sees the light and he's like, okay, are you coloring or are you being creative? I go, I'm thinking. He goes, okay, good night.
I love it. He's been by your side for how many years now?
40, marriage 45, 47 altogether.
Fabulous. Yeah, numbers that I will never see. So I really admire you for that. So let's bring out our expert correspondent joining us from Scotland, the only gentleman on the panel. And we love him because he's going to be doing the Royal Roundup for HELENA CHARD today. And he's also going to be sharing a presentation. Welcome, Simon Macdonald. Hello.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be back again. My goodness, it must be Wednesday, the best day of the week, Wednesday afternoon.
Yes, for sure.
Congratulations, DIANN, on so long married. You deserve the long-term service medal and the bar to go with it as well.
I don't know if I do, but maybe my husband puts up with me.
You both do.
Well, you know, DIANN, I have to say, even though I've never can make those numbers, but a lot of it has to do with listening, right? And making concessions and being thoughtful of the other person and where they are in what they're doing.
Absolutely. But I think that happens over time in a marriage because at first, it takes a while to not be I, and it takes a lot of work, but it's the best thing that can ever happen to you. And as well as for me personally, having, children is just a true joy and blessing.
Fantastic. Well, we're very happy for you.
I'm sure Simon has something to say about marriage too. He has a happy marriage.
Well, it's, each year rumbles on and on and on.
It does mature.
That's it.
And can I have some of that brandy or is it whiskey behind you?
That's port. Any port in a storm. Actually, it's not stormy today. It's a beautiful day today. And, yesterday for the first time this year, I actually felt too hot.
Wow.
Nice to hot. So there we are. And no doubt if HELENA was here, she'd be sort of heaving a sigh and saying, oh, it's not so nice down here. But that's the rule of thumb. In the UK, if we get it good up here, they get it bad down there, and vice versa. That's why they get it good just about all the time.
Well, it is absolutely pouring here like a monsoon.
Send some more our way.
Yes, for sure. All right, well, I'm excited to get the show started. There's so much going on. So HELENA CHARD, our colleague, has the day off. So hello, HELENA. We miss you. We look forward to seeing you next week. So Simon, you're going to lead us through some royal news. What say you?
Well, it's been one of these weeks. I haven't really had much time to catch up and everything. I've been sort of doing bits and pieces here, there, and everywhere, and it's just gone into one great blur so far. However, the hot story here at the moment is that the Invictus Games, which was founded by Prince Harry, which is special international games for wounded servicemen, and it was actually, I think, the best thing that Harry has ever done. And so it's been out for bid for all the different cities around the world to who's going to host it. And hey ho, we've got it in Birmingham, in Englandshire. And so, it's a great coup to have the Invictus Games here. It's a fantastic event. So there we are. But of course, the guesswork is on the go now. Will Meghan come? Because she had promised apparently quite vehemently that she would not set foot in the UK again. So this is going to be an interesting one to see if she does actually show up, because she's been to all the others. So I think it'd be a great shame if she didn't come to this one. Wimbledon, well, that finished about a week ago there, and it was just so nice to see Catherine, the Princess of Wales, presenting the trophies for the men's singles there, and she's looking tremendous. She really is. I'd say she's maybe lost a bit of weight, but by golly, she's not lost any personality. She is an absolute star. And of course, Charlotte was there as well. She's very keen on tennis too. So yeah, it was very, very nice. So that is pretty much a brief royal roundup. Other than the King, of course, you can't go a royal roundup without mentioning the King. And he's doing a tour of Australia shortly as well, later on this year. I think it was October. He's going out to Australia, get some sunshine. So good for him. He's still battling with the cancer thing, but it seems to be that they seem to have it more or less under control. Or has he got it under control, and got his doctors under control? I don't know, but there we go. So he's doing the first overseas engagement, Australia, and apparently to Samoa as well. Lucky guy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Simon. I had heard that Meghan Markle is coming out with some new cooking show. Is that correct? Did you hear anything about it?
That too.
You did too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, never invited me on.
I know. We've got a celebrity chef here in the house, and you could, I'm sure, teach her a number of things.
Yeah, I'm available. Yes.
And I think if I understood what I read, it was that she's not cooking. She's just having people on.
Yeah,
But,
she won't be cooking. She will be stirring it up instead.
Yeah. Ooh.
All right, so we know that we believe it's true, but we're not sure when it's coming out or
Right.
the exact contents of it. Okay.
Is this to be the 50th show on USA Global TV?
Well, I don't know. If she wants to do her show here, we can see. But we actually have a cooking show that's starting with Ki Song Chung in London. So
Wow.
yeah, so that's interesting. We're still waiting for Simon for you to come back with your cooking show. So
Yes. I
Let's get
enjoyed that. It was a nice little series that you did there with Ricky, and it was fun doing it. It really was. It was great fun doing it. But time is a problem at the moment. Big
Time is
problem.
always a problem.
Yes.
But speaking of cooking, today I made homemade cinnamon rolls.
oh, sounds amazing.
Lovely.
And Diane, how do you keep your figure with all the baking that you do? I'm always amazed when I see on Facebook what you're cooking. I'm thinking, how does she stay trim?
I give it away.
Never trust a thin chef.
There is the secret. I love it. Well, hopefully Diane and I will be meeting sometime in the near future. Details to be kept to ourselves at the moment, right?
I hope so.
We'll see if we can make it work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, I know that as a follow-up from last week, we were talking about yachting and something special that's going on. Simon, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? I know we have a video clip.
Yes, indeed. Well, I was up in Oban on Sunday, to see the boats off on their final leg, which is going from Oban back down to Portsmouth in the deep south of England. And they're on the way at the moment. It will take them 5 days from the Sunday to get to Portsmouth. And currently they're just off the southwest tip of Ireland. So, they've gone around the outsides, better winds there and so on. And these boats are built for speed and not comfort. And they need a lot of wind to power them along at the rate which they like to go. I mean, through their venture around the world, they've encountered hurricanes and storms. They've encountered flat calms and no wind at all. So they've really been through the ringer with it this time. But Oban last Sunday was crazy with people. I mean, there was over 1,000 people there, and the town put on, a tremendous show. They had pipe band out. They had Highland dancers. We had a parade led by the pipe band from the main pier round to North Pier, where the boats are moored, and following the pipe band was each crew, and there's about 22 people on each crew of the 11 boats. So it was quite a long procession of all these people. And the streets were lined with people cheering and waving flags and all the rest of it. So, yeah, it was a tremendous festive atmosphere. So watched the boats going out, and they circled the bay a few times, and there were so many other boats there gathering in as well. And I think we've got a video there of it as well. And, I'm not sure how the sound is. If there's no sound, I will talk you through it.
We absolutely have the video. We're not going to play the sound only in case there's a copyright issue. So we will drop the link for people to go ahead and watch it themselves.
Yeah.
So here we go.
Lovely. There we go. So there we are. We're in Oban. There's the pipers and skippers of the yachts, and the people lining the sides of the quay to watch the crews go off. So, I mean, the boats themselves, I talked about last week, they're just over 70 feet in length, built for speed, not comfort. In fact, they're very uncomfortable. You have to share a bunk on a watch system. So there's the 22 crew. It's really like 2 crews of 11 people on to run the boat. So they call it hot bunking. So the pipe band were in good form, and they always get a resounding cheer. We've got some excellent pipe bands in this part of the world, including world champions as well. So everybody's happy, and there's a good gathering of the crew. That's Sir Robin Knox-Johnson, who is the president of the event. I know him very well. He was about the first person to do a solo round the world trip back in the 70s on a boat called Suhala, which she was just a very small boat, and he was quite an enduring man. He really is. So this is the final parade now with the boats before as they're going out of Oban Bay to the start line, because Oban Bay itself is just too small to have the start of these boats. That's them now under full sail, underway. It was a great start there as well, because the boats are all bunched close together, jostling for place to get the best air and the best wind. Dare to Lead, she was the one that actually got the best start of the lot, and she held the lead for a while. She's now dropped back to about 10th place today, but looking at where she's based, I think she's actually going to pick up places on the way through the race. So it was a tremendous thing, and it's the first time we've ever had the Round the World Clipper Yacht Race coming into any Scottish port, never mind just Oban. And unfortunately, Oban is just 40 minutes up the road from here. So it's my main town, the big city, the bright lights of Oban, and it's the gateway to the Isles as well. The Caledonia Macbrain, who run the ferry service right on the west of Scotland, they run about four or five boats out of Oban itself, and they're quite sizable ferries. And there was a little bit of nail biting at one time as well when the ferries have got to keep their schedules. Normally, the rule of the road says that power gives way to sail, but when you've got a whacking great several thousand ton lump of steel ferry bearing down on you, if you're in a yacht, you get out of the way, and that's it. But the ferries do have right of way, so the Isle of Mull, which is one of the biggest ferries in the Brain's fleet, cast off her lines to go over to the Isle of Mull, her namesake, and right through the middle of the fleet as they were getting the sails up and getting everything ready. So it was quite exciting. I mean, people surrounding me were making comments, will they or won't they? But they did. So there we were.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I was wondering how they get some of those, the footage that they get, because you wonder, is it from a plane or the angles that they get? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I mean, there was a helicopter buzzing about, there was drones buzzing about, and there were two seaplanes as well flying in formation. I mean, a squadron of seaplanes over Oban. This is a company that set up, it was an airline pilot, and he bought a seaplane. And, I mean, if you're an airline pilot, what do you do as a hobby? You fly airplanes. So he bought the seaplane, and it's actually turned out to be a very successful business. He's been doing some charter flights all around the west coast of Scotland. And he's got another one now as well. So, he's doing very well with it. So he's no longer an airline pilot. He's got his own airline, I suppose.
There you go. I have a question for you. So do y'all start, meaning the Scottish people, start learning how to sail like the moment you're born, or do you wait till you're 4?
Well, I was 4 when I started sailing, and I've gone sideways ever since. I mean, absolutely passionate about sailing. It was, my parents, they sailed as well. My father in particular, he was very, very keen yacht racing, as am I. And I mean, in my time now, I've owned 2 ex-Olympic race yachts, and competed those nationally and internationally as well. I've sailed in quite a number of countries and a variety of different boats as well. And at the moment, for the first time in my life, I'm boatless, and it feels very, very strange. And watching the fleet there in Oban Sunday, I thought, oh heck, I wish I was on one of those boats there. I just love it, absolutely love it. But well, I'm not exactly in my first flush of youth, and I'm now having to admit to it. And so I think my racing days are probably, committed to memories now.
Oh, boo.
But I'm not saying that my sailing days are committed to memories. Oh no. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's good news. And Simon, I do have a question for you. With all of your knowledge of the fisheries, and also as your role as a celebrity chef, we've talked before about the oceans and how they've become contaminated and polluted. And I just read a story today. I don't know if you saw it, Diane. I think it was in People magazine, about sharks that are being discovered having ingested cocaine.
I read that yesterday as well.
Okay.
Now, I mean, I wouldn't like to encounter a shark at the best of times, but a shark that's high on cocaine, heaven forbid.
Well, you know what I started thinking? I mean, shark is obviously something you can order at a restaurant or you can prepare. So as a chef, how do you know if what you're serving people has been drugs or contaminated? You don't know, right?
Well, you let your sous chef try it, and if he just goes to Lally, then you think, well, that's it. We'll have some fun with the customers tonight.
But I have read that not just sharks, but in general, everything that ends up in the water, whether it's poison or pollution, etc., the sea life takes it in, and it's very disturbing to me.
Yeah, I wouldn't get overly worried about it just now. Okay, I mean the sharks, they're inquisitive things as well, and these sharks, they found them. It was off Brazil, and there was apparently a lot of cocaine was dumped over the side of a boat as it was being pursued, and they didn't want to get caught with this stuff on board, so they dumped it over the side. And the sharks, being the inquisitive creatures they are, thought, let's have a nibble of this. And they said, oh, wow, this is fun.
This is better than sugar.
So that was it. So we got these long-snouted sharks, which are just as high as kites, becoming flying.
That can kill them also, right? Just like...
I suppose it could, but I suppose underwater is diluted a bit.
Yeah, maybe. I just thought it was interesting. I just wondered, as a chef, because I read another article that they found fish that have swallowed or ingested these little pieces of plastic. And then
I think this is a bigger problem than fish getting high in cocaine. I think that absorbing plastic, I mean, it's everywhere. And, a lot of the food we eat, it's not just fish. It's in meats and chickens and goodness knows what all. That, there's microplastics that are there that, we are ingesting unaware of it. And it doesn't, being plastic, it's a great preservative. It doesn't make us last any longer, I think. But it comes out gift wrap. But no, it's a problem, a major problem. The amount of plastic pollution that's in the sea and the Pacific Ocean. There's great rafts of the stuff, and rafts of it about the size of the United Kingdom. So that's it's a major problem, and it's the type of plastic. I mean, discarded things like discarded fishing nets. And these plastic woven sacks as well, because they sort of shred and so on, and turtles and whales and sharks and all sorts of fish get entangled in that, and it's becoming an increasing problem. So it's just the solution to it is going to take a long time to come to fruition. I think there was a young Dutch lad, and he was only about 15, and he came up with a method of scooping this stuff out of the sea and baling it and then having it recycled. And at 15 years of age, he's actually made quite a successful business out of it as well, and chartered ships and so on to adapt this gear for trawling it up. Our own fishing fleet here as well, they catch any plastic now in their nets, then it's brought ashore, and the fishing ports have all got big bins, so it can go into to be taken away, to be disposed of and recycled. There's a whole craft industry is set up here around using recycled fishing nets, and it's all sort of ground down and then made into whatever type of plastic or lamps or you name it. They're making all sorts of furniture out of the recycled fishing nets. So there is at least a usage now for it. But plastic, you can never really get rid of it.
It's true. And Roland Friedel, one of our team members, he's had a couple of people on who actually showed what they've been able to make out of the plastic that's been recycled, the furniture, etc. But what I'm wondering is, what about making the nets out of something other than plastic? I'm sure someone's working on that, or maybe it's already been done. I mean, I could go on Shark Tank and bring this up, but I don't have a business.
Well, yes. Well, I mean, here's a way of recycling from the sea, because now, disposable plastic cups are now becoming a thing of the past. But the plastic cups still appear, but they're made out of seaweed, of all things. Wow. And seaweed treated in a certain way forms like a plastic, but it is totally compostable. So, perhaps they might start making fishing gear out of seaweed. There's a thought.
Very clever.
You heard it here first.
Just making a mental note of that now, writing it down. Idea, inspiration, light bulb moment.
That's right.
For you.
Speak to my friendly fishing gear maker and say, look, let's make fishing nets out of seaweed.
Yeah, there's so many different options. I'm in the state of New Jersey, which is plastic free. So you have to bring your own bag, or they've got paper bags. But it's funny, when I go back to Florida, it's plastic everywhere. It makes no sense.
So New Jersey, plastic free, bring your own plastic bag.
Right, right, exactly. It doesn't. What about where you are, Diane?
Well, some stores, I'm speaking of grocery stores now. If you want to have a plastic bag, you have to pay for it. Otherwise, you bring your own bag. I go to a store where I don't have to pay for a plastic bag, but I recycle my bags, so I feel good about it.
Yeah.
Do they offer paper bags or no?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
And that's what I personally get predominantly is paper bags.
Mm-hmm.
Because then I can recycle those for sure. And then we have a whole recycling world that takes place every Thursday is pickup day.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
I mean, Scotland was certainly becoming, very conscious of this, and Scottish government are doing, a lot to promote, getting away from plastic as well. Paper bags in the supermarkets here. Well, the amount of rain we get, is not the best of ideas. But I can't remember when I last actually had to buy a plastic bag or a bag in the supermarket. Reuse my bags, and they've lasted for a long time. So it's we are very conscious of it here as well. And as I say, with the with all the disposable plastic. Disposable, not plastic anymore, but seaweed drinking containers and what have you, then it's the message is going green. It's
Yes,
good for
that's
the
right.
seaweed industry as well.
When I was living in Dubai and then a summer in France, what I loved is you purchased a cart that you could roll, and then you take it into the grocery store and you fill your cart up, and then you go and you check out. So I thought this is magical because you walk back to your flat and so forth. And so when I got home, I said, I'm going to use my cart. I can't tell you how many times in the grocery store the security was following me as I'm loading up my cart. So then I thought, okay, fine. I'll put my cart into the big cart, and then I'll buy all the groceries, and then I'll have them loaded into my cart and my personal cart. And then finally the man goes, you're causing so many problems doing this. Can you just not bring that thing with you?
What did
I
you
thought it
say?
was very
Yes, I love the creativity of it. Something that I always think, because there's a number of places here on this island where they don't give you a bag, so you have to either have your own or you put it. And so I will usually put it usually have my gym bag because I'm walking to go to the gym. But I've got my change of clothes and things in there. And I'm thinking these dirty packages, right? Because the packages are all dirty. They've been scanned and everything else. So now I brought a trash bag that I actually have which is plastic, by the way. And that's inside my gym bag. And I put that in there until I get home. So that's right about the trash bags are plastic.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
I know. I mean, it rather defeats the object of it, doesn't it? I mean,
Yes.
everything is plastic. I mean, half of a car is made of plastic now as well.
That's
So,
true.
it's
true.
It's true. I know in one of our shows, Coexistence and Sustainability with Pet Psychic Amina, she was talking about plastic and how it ends up in the waterways. But if you think of soda, which my mom was a huge Coca-Cola fan, and she would get the soda and has those plastic, it looks like the rings, you know what I mean? And it ends up around birds' necks.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
Yes. That's a big problem as well. I mean, now I've noticed that they've stopped making these. It's four rings for holding 4 cans. Yeah. Well, most of the up here anyway in Scotland, they seem to have just disappeared now, and they're all made of cardboard or seaweed or whatever. So that message got through, because they're a nightmare, those things, with getting caught with seabirds and otters and all sorts of creatures as well.
Right. So what else is going on in Scotland?
Yes.
Politics are happy compared to here.
Well, we're a happy bunch over here. We've got the world's monopoly on whiskey, so we're
There you
very
go.
happy. Yeah,
What about Tennessee? Isn't that where Jack Daniels is? That's a different kind of whiskey, right?
yeah, it's a different kind of whiskey.
Different
Yeah,
kind. We're not even talking about that.
it's a good attempt, but your whiskey is spelt EY at the end. Ours is just Y, and it's only Scotch whiskey that can be spelt that way as well.
Really?
Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah,
Are you a whiskey drinker, DIANN?
No. The hardest thing I ever drink is a Coca-Cola.
oh, goodness. I thought 45 years of marriage and so on, you haven't been drunk, haven't been driven to whiskey, then you're doing pretty well. You got a good one there.
In all honesty, promise you, I have never been drunk in my entire life.
You've never been a drinker.
There's a
Well,
challenge.
I
Another
once had Long Island iced tea, and I was like, "There's something wrong with me," and my husband just cracked up laughing. Never again.
Well, that has like 7 shots in it or something. That's like
Is
a
that what it
college
is?
drink.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
like-
switched to water.
Yeah, well, no wonder. That can do you in. That was something in college that I remember, but I don't remember a lot. So-
No, my downfall is chocolate.
Mine too.
Oh, ditto. I think it's a global issue, that one.
Exactly. I'm thinking to myself, it's literally pouring rain. How am I going to walk to the store and get some kind of chocolate because I'm really freaking out over here? But anyway, I know, Simon, you've got a great presentation for us, and the clock is ticking, so I'd love to have you share that if you're ready.
Absolutely, yes. Well, last week, I talked about David Sterling, who was the original founder of the SAS, which are Special Air Service or Special Forces. He's quite a character, as David Sterling. I've met him, but the one who supersedes him as far as being a real rogue and a maverick and so on as well was a chap called Paddy Mayne. Paddy Mayne took over command of the SAS after David Sterling had got captured by the Germans. So he was really, really quite a man. So on the night of December the 14th, 1941, was bitterly cold in the North African desert. Midway between El Aguila and Tripoli in Libya was a German and Italian airbase outside of Tamat. Situated in the southern Mediterranean coast, it was a vital installation and supporting Rommel's Afrika Korps and Field Marshal Kesselring's panzer tanks. Tamat was a perfect target for Commonwealth forces. The base was shut down for the night, and about 30 German and Italian airmen were eating and drinking and socializing in the officers' mess. The pilots were shocked when the door shattered under the impact of a booted foot. Filling the entrance was the silhouette of a large man in British uniform with a submachine gun against his right hip. He opened fire. By the time the Tommy gun's drum of 50 rounds was empty, the room was littered with dead and dying men. As suddenly as he had appeared, the massive soldier was gone. He was Lieutenant Robert Blair, Paddy Mayne, of Britain's Special Air Service, the SAS. And he was far from finished with Tamat. After Mayne and the 5 other members of his commando squad withdrew into the blackness of the surrounding desert, the base's confused personnel spent almost an hour shooting at each other in the poor light. The initial attack was at 2140 hours. Just after 2300 hours, Mayne and his men crept back to the airfield and planted explosives on the aircraft parked around the base's perimeter. They also booby-trapped fuel and ammunition dumps and telephone poles. Just before midnight, Tamat erupted as plastic explosives destroyed planes and ignited fuel and bombs. This first raid on Tamat heralded a new style of warfare that would be a spear in the heart of Germany's North African military presence. The Germans certainly didn't anticipate the degree of devastation coming to them, and, well, neither did the British, because Mayne didn't bother telling either side what he had in mind. He would show them. Born in Newtownards in Ireland on January the 11th, 1915, Mayne was a member of the Queen's University Officer Training Corps at the time of the 1938 Munich crisis. In February 1939, he was commissioned into the 5th Flight Anti-Artillery Territorial Regiment, even though his superiors had evaluated them as unruly and generally unreliable. So when war was declared in September, that was. So while Hitler's armies overran Europe, Maine was at Loch Island in Scotland, which I'd spoken about a few weeks ago, enduring brutal physical training, becoming a weapons expert, leading map reading, and swimming in full kit, rock climbing, practicing unarmed combat, and using explosives. Maine, he was a deadly warrior by the time he was sent to the Mediterranean theatre in the summer of 1941. Maine's unit participated in the abortive Litiani raid, the river raid in Syria, in which 120 Commonwealth soldiers were killed. Maine became angry at his commanding officer, who was 24-year-old Lieutenant Colonel Geoffrey Keyes, for not including him on the roster for a raid to abduct Rommel. So when Keyes imprudently approached Maine in the mess hall one night, the resentful young Irishman rose from his chair and knocked his colonel senseless with a blow from the jaw. His next commanding officer, who was Colonel David Sterling, would be much wiser in utilising Maine's talents. Hastily organising the best available talent into the new SAS, Sterling relocated his unit to North Africa and arranging to work with the Long Range Desert Group, or the LRDG. Sterling and Maine were ready for special operations by the late 1941, so the raid in Tamat set the standard for ensuing SAS depredations. Realising the Germans would not be expecting another raid in Tamat for a while after the December 14th assault, the SAS returned to this mark on the 27th, and the second visiting resulted in 27 warplanes blown up, along with several fuel dumps, 3 trucks, and 2 trailers crammed with vital spare parts. The Commonwealth land offensive of late 1941 had driven the Germans out of Benghazi and forcing them to ship supplies and reinforcements to the port of Borat, which was 350 miles to the west. A foray against the Borat happened to fall at a time when the harbour was empty, and Maine and his commanders found nothing to destroy but 18 fuel drums and a few food caches instead. Well, the raiding party returned home in time for Rommel's early 1942 counter-offensive that carried his forces all the way back to the Gazala line, from which he had been driven 2 months earlier. In the midst of all this military action, Maine was awarded the Distinguished Service Order. Now promoted to captain, he led his men in crucial attacks on Benghazi harbour and the adjacent airfields. On March the 15th, he set out to attack an airfield called Berka Satellite, and accompanied by 2 corporals named Rose and Bennett and a private Byrne, he reached the target at 3 a.m. the next day, while the commandos blew up the base's fuel dumps, 15 aircraft, and a stack of 12 torpedoes. Escaping cleanly, they missed their rendezvous and had to walk 30 miles across the sweltering desert to the next LRDG pickup point. On May 26th, Rommel launched an offensive, capturing the Allied bastion of Tobruk and taking 33,000 prisoners, including 5 generals and a huge haul of tanks and artillery pieces, food and medicine. So by the end of June, the British 8th Army had been shoved all the way to El Alamein, across the Egyptian frontier, and was just 60 miles west of Alexandria. The SAS swiftly outfitted a fleet of jeeps for mobile warfare, welding 2 Vickers machine guns facing forward in the vehicle and a swiveling 50 caliber machine gun in the rear of each jeep. So the commandos transformed the machines into devastating high-speed gun platforms. By the end of July 1942, the unit was wholly motorized, so there's a big fleet of these things have been created then. On July the 4th, before the transformation was complete, an SAS convoy set out to raid the airfields scattered in the Baghouz region, which was 100 miles behind the enemy lines. Reaching Baghouz on the night of July the 7th, Maine and 3 men blew up 22 aircraft. This was far fewer than they had sabotaged, and Maine growled, "Damn, we did 40 aircraft. Some of the primers must have been damp." So not about to leave the job undone, Main and Sterling charged their vehicles onto the airfield again and opened up with their Vickers guns, firing 1,200 rounds per minute apiece. Stunned by this new assault after they assumed the saboteurs had departed, the Germans ran for cover as the raiders destroyed 12 more warplanes. In early July, Main and Sterling contrived a plan for a major raid on the sprawling Luftwaffe base at El Daba, which was about 50 miles west of El Alamein. By this time, the Germans had strengthened security around their bases. The two commanders conspired to launch a sudden jeep-borne attack out of the darkness, ploughing through the perimeter defences and shooting up the installations. So on the night of July the 9th, Main used this strategy in El Daba and destroyed 14 aircraft. 2 nights later, he led his jeeps back to Bagrouche and destroyed 22 more planes. Main and his SAS men, even though they were among the most effective military units then fighting, remained actually virtually unknown to anybody, in particular on our own side. Well, at this point, Allied reconnaissance flights revealed that Sidi Henish and another Luftwaffe field in the Bagrouche area was packed with these priceless Junkers Ju-52 transport planes. These tri-motor cargo carriers were invaluable for making his eastward advance possible by ferrying in men, medicine, munitions, and provisions. Main and Sterling then, of course, devised a plot to send 18 jeeps against the facility under a full moon, because the bright moonlight would make it difficult for the SAS to approach the field unnoticed. The Germans would not be expecting such a raid. Now, the vehicles would brazenly advance in a line abreast, and as they neared their target's perimeter, they would form into 2 columns and drive into the base at high speed and shoot. With the jeeps spaced just 5 yards apart, and so many powerful, fast-firing guns blazing at once, perfect timing was crucial to avoiding the raiders hitting each other with their gunfire or colliding with their jeeps. After exhaustively rehearsing the assault, Main led the strike force into the Sahara at dusk on July 27th. 4 hours later, the raiders were within half a mile of the airfield and preparing to form into their twin attack columns when the installation ahead was suddenly flooded with light. At first, the raiders thought, they've been spotted. But it turned out that the brilliant illumination was actually guiding a Heinkel bomber returning from a night patrol. So the jeeps continued advancing and barged straight into the base as their gunners opened up with a devastating display of firepower. The Ju-52s were there all right, but the base turned out to be an even more of a prime target than Main and Sterling had actually expected, as they wound their vehicles between the rows of parked Messerschmitt fighters, Heinkels, and Stuka dive bombers as well. So the Germans were completely surprised, and within minutes the base was ablaze, but Main wouldn't leave any job unfinished. As the attackers were leaving, he spied a lone Ju-52 that the raiders had overlooked. So with his machine guns out of ammunition, Main jumped from his jeep and ran to the plane, slapped a plastic bomb onto its wing, galloped back to his vehicle and roared off into the desert. In this attack, the SAS lost 1 man and 1 jeep, in exchange for at least 40 Luftwaffe aircraft destroyed. This spectacular success led the 8th Army High Command in Cairo to decide that Main and his outfit should now actually be used in a large-scale operation. Well, General Montgomery, the new appointed commander of the 8th Army, was anxious to achieve a decisive military victory before the United States entered the war in force. He decided that the SAS would take part in a large-scale operation against Benghazi Harbour. So on the night of September the 13th, the raiders set out for Benghazi. Stopping at an unmanned roadblock just out the city, the convoy was actually ambushed from both sides of the road. So sent reeling back to Kurfa, the column still had another 800 miles to go to reach friendly lines. Though constantly strafed by the Luftwaffe, the force lost men and machines steadily along the route. At one point, Paddy Main was wildly zigzagging his jeep while being strafed by a German pilot, when one of the men in his jeep was wounded and fell from the vehicle. Well, after finding cover and parking up his jeep, Main, not knowing whether the man who had fallen from the vehicle was dead or alive, backtracked until he found the wounded soldier and carried him on his shoulders back to the jeep. The SAS was closely involved in Montgomery's offensive in the autumn of 1942, With Rommel dug in at El Aguila, Maine, and 90 of his men were ordered to relocate to the wadi called Bir Sultan, which was about 100 miles south of Rommel's lines. With 30 jeeps, the SAS was tasked with haunting the 400-mile of highway linking the Germans with their supply base at Tripoli. Averaging 16 raids per week, the Jeep commandos made nocturnal supply runs as perilous for the Afrika Korps as daylight runs under a sky controlled by the Royal Air Force. The pinch on the German supplies became so severe that Hitler himself actually issued a formal order that these British saboteurs and their accomplices are to be hunted down and exterminated without mercy. Promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, Paddy Mayne took over command of the SAS after the capture of Colonel David Stirling. Mayne threw himself into retraining, should they say, his troops for non-desert warfare, even teaching them to fight on horseback. So now called the SRS, the unit fought through Sicily, Italy, France, and into Germany. During the Normandy campaign, the unit worked in cooperation with the French resistance, operating behind German lines and easing the advance for the Allies. The final days of the war in Europe saw some bloody combat for the SRS. On April the 9th, 1945, Lieutenant Colonel Mayne and his men were leading a regiment of Canadian 4th Armoured Division through the German countryside northeast of the city of Oldenburg, which is en route to Kiel, when the column was ambushed by German troops firing from a house at the side of the road. Grabbing a machine gun, Mayne ran into the house alone and gunned down every enemy soldier inside. He then ran back outside and deployed his men and jumped behind the wheel of a jeep with another officer as gunner. Mayne then drove about 100 yards further up the road to where the enemy was raking the convoy with gunfire from positions in a wooded area. Fully exposed to the Germans, Paddy Mayne drove his jeep slowly up and down the thoroughfare while his gunner fired at the enemy positions. Although still under fire, he then returned his vehicle to the point of ambush and lifted numerous wounded British and Canadian soldiers out of the roadway and placed them in his jeep and drove them to the rear. The column, which had been at a standstill until Mayne's appearance at that point, continued its advance until it was a full 20 miles ahead of the division's main body. With their rear threatened by the appearance of Mayne and his spearhead, the Germans withdrew, easing the advance for the rest of the division. Mayne both saved the wounded and routed the enemy, and never mentioned the incident to anybody ever again. The encounter at Oldenburg earned Mayne his third bar to his Distinguished Service Order. However, in 2005, the House of Commons in London voted in favour for upgrading the DSO to the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest decoration for valour. Mayne's unselfish dedication to his cause is exemplified by how he kept secret a painful back injury he'd suffered in North Africa. His repeated parachute drops into France in 1944 agonizingly exacerbated a damaged vertebrae, but he kept a closely guarded secret. No one else knew about the injury until after the war. So after surviving everything the Third Reich could throw at him for 4 years, Blair, Paddy Mayne, fell prey to the peace that he had done so much to achieve. Never married and childless, his only legacy is his fantastic military record. Quite some guy. Fearless.
Woo,
Wow, that was a lot
fantastic.
to take in. That was so amazing.
Incredible man. Absolutely incredible man. Really was. He just had no fear, but he had great regard for his men, and he would put himself in harm's way to save his men as well. And he was a very clever tactician as well. He would do the unexpected, and that was Paddy Mayne's trump card. But he would do it all in a very unconventional way.
Amazing.
Absolutely amazing. And these presentations are just getting better and better. And your dear friend DIANN had an amazing idea, which we'll tell you later.
Oh,
I'm always thinking, Simon.
yes.
Great ideas.
Yes, that's what the submarine commander said to a ship he just torpedoed. He said, "Oh, yeah, I'm sinking. I'm sinking. And he said, oh, what are you sinking about? So,
You know, in your presentation, what caught me was when you said they only shot down 22 airplanes, and I'm like, that's a lot of
That
airplanes.
is a lot.
yeah, I mean, well, and then to realize that he'd forgotten one, so he went back to sort it out himself. No ammunition in these guns. You know, they went in there, and I mean, you know, he couldn't shoot back at them, so that's it. He just had another bit of plastic explosive. There's the plastic coming back
More
into
plastic
it.
again.
Slapped it on the side of the plane and blew the thing up.
You know, I think Scotland produces some really manly men.
I think we're sometimes regarded as being one wave short of a shipwreck. You know, we're just,
so brave, so strong.
Devil may care, I think, at times. Something to do with the wild weather. You know, wild weather, wild men. So anyway, Pat, we've got to look at what happened on this day.
Oh yes,
on this day.
Right. Well, on this day in the year 1567, Mary, Queen of Scots, is forced to abdicate. Her 1-year-old son becomes King James VI and James I of England. I spoke about Mary, Queen of Scots a few weeks ago. I did a piece on her as well, and her son, James VI. So 1-year-old, that's him. He's forced to become king. 1969. Apollo 11 returned to Earth after taking the first astronauts to the moon and returning them safely. For birthdays today, well, we're born in this day in 1897. Amelia Earhart, American aviator and the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic, was born in Atchison in Kansas. In 1969, Jennifer Lopez, J-Lo, the American actress and pop singer, who's 54 today. Happy birthday, Jennifer. And she was born in the Bronx in New York. For death today, well, we've got in 1862, Martin Van Buren, 8th President of the United States, Democrat Party, dies of heart failure, aged 79. Then in 1980, Peter Sellers, English actor and comedian, famous for The Goon Show and the Pink Panther series. I mean, Peter Sellers is just such a professional at his profession. He was one of the best comedy actors ever. Anyway, he sadly died at age of 54. So there we have on this day for this week. What are we going to have next time?
I didn't realize Peter Sellers died so young.
He did, yes. He had a heart attack, and he was just so amazing. His delivery time was absolutely perfect, and he used to do most of his own stunts as well. And
really?
He took some pretty heavy knocks. I mean, actually, and you think of it in the acting world, there are a lot of them who do their own stunts, and they still survive to tell the day as well. So Tom Cruise, one of the big names today as well. He likes to do his own stunts.
I like the way he runs. He's like moving. In his dress shoes, no less, with those tight pants.
Yeah, I'd hate to be his insurance company. You know?
Good point.
I hate to think what the premiums are. You know, I mean,
when you mentioned Earhart, I thought about how a beautiful baby is born, and yet they end up doing so many incredible things in their life. But when you look at that sweet little innocent face, you think, never would I think that you were ever going to be the first woman to fly across the Atlantic. Incredible.
Yeah, I was thinking the same as well. And Paddy Mayne's mother looked at him and says, "What a beautiful little thing, wouldn't harm a fly."
Right. Exactly. And poor Mary Queen.
Harm a fly, but you take out a few aircraft, yes.
Yeah. Enjoy your childhood, everybody who's listening.
That's right. Live in the present. You know, it's interesting. I just came across something. This is unrelated, but just think about the present, about whether we live in the past, we live in the present, or we're living in the future. I'm going to bring the chart out to show people next time. But it's interesting when you look and think, are you living in the present today? Are you worried about what already happened, obsessing, you feel guilty, or are you scared about what's going to happen?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
just off the cuff,
Totally,
Simon,
yeah.
where do you think you live?
Where do
Past,
I
present,
live?
future?
I live for the moment, and it's great fun. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's full of surprises. I like that. I know what happened before. You learn from your own mistakes, but if you're a genius, you'll learn from other people's mistakes. I live for the moment.
I figured that about you. Absolutely. Diane, how about you?
I'm like Simon. I mean, I used to worry about things, but now I just give it up to the Lord and not worry about it because I can't control it.
No, maybe it has to do with our age. I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, you can't control it, but have a darn good try.
this is true.
Well, thank you for being in the moment here on the show today, as always. And Simon, I'm really excited for us to circle back with you about this fabulous idea, which we'll announce if you agree. And otherwise, and Scotland's next show is coming up. It's called Podcast Maestro Launch It, followed by the Royally Rich Lifestyle Show, and followed by Next Level Coaching with Robert J. Moore. So stay tuned for all of those. All right, last words, Simon, before we go.
Well, I think probably this was one that Paddy Mayne might have even thought of as well. The sky is not the limit when there are footprints on the moon. But there weren't any footprints in the moon in his day, so he certainly made a lot of footprints in the desert, that's for sure.
Yeah. Where are you leaving your footprints or leaving your mark on this world, right?
Yeah, I mean, his footprints weren't running away. They were running to them.
Toward, yes. Diane, what about you? What are your last words for today?
I just hope everyone has a really blessed day and don't talk about politics. Life will be easier.
Very true. And be kind to one another and be kind to yourself.
Amen.
Amen. All right. We'll see you all next time. Please do stay tuned for Ann's show coming up right after this. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.